You also have that problem?
Oh,
Yes, I have
hi.
two
Hello,
lovebirds.
friends.
Yeah, I also
Hello,
have one.
friends.
So
We have gone live. We have gone live. And I guess I introduce myself. I'm Genia Nuh, project lead for the Story Project 11 by www.tellmeyourstory.biz. And I welcome you to this session of the Letters from Santa series. The project Letters from Santa is addressed to parents and children. Though Santa is a mythical creation, most of us are blessed with the participation of our parents, especially the mothers in our life who look after us, take care of us, fulfill our wishes, and guide us in the right path. This project aims at providing insightful guidance and evoke interest in certain aspects of life that may shape the life of children better. Today, I'm privileged to have Richa S. Mukherjee, Parvati Chandran, and Nandini Sengupta for the panel session titled Leadership Spirit in Children. Let me begin with introducing the panelists. Richa S. Mukherjee is a TEDx speaker and award winning author, columnist, ex journalist, and advertising professional. She has authored 4 books, of which 3 are being adapted for screen. She is a blogger and travel writer and contributes to several platforms. She is a Shelf Champ blog chatter and Cool Kanya mentor. She has authored several e singles, anthologies, and audiobooks. Her latest book is The Curse of Kuldhara, the second installment in the very popular Kanpur Khufia Private Limited series. Coming to the next panelist, Nandini Sengupta is a Pondicherry based journalist and author of historical fiction and narrative history. After a chance visit to Ajanta Ellora caves, she became fascinated with India's past in general and ancient early medieval India in particular. For the next 10 years, she read history for fun, and when she began to write, it was history she turned to for material. Her book credits include the best selling The Blue Horse and Other Amazing Animals from Indian History, which debuted in November 2020, The King Within the Poisoned Heart, and the Ocean's Own Book 1, 11, 1, 2, and 3 of the Gupta Empire trilogy by HarperCollins India, published in 2017, 19, and 21, respectively, and The Story of Kalidas, The Gem Among Poets by Aisha Goodworth Publications. Rani Durgavati, The Forgotten Life of a Warrior Queen, published by Penguin India, is her first narrative non-fiction biography. Coming to Parvati Chandran, our final panelist, Parvati Chandran has been working with and for children in vulnerable and distress situations for 17 years. She has worked and led various organizations committed to welfare of children across the country. Parvati firmly believes that child protection issues, both at systematic and implementation level, have been much neglected, and that without safe spaces, development trajectory remains dysfunctional. So let me begin. Let's set selling with the first question of the session. Often in our childhood, we display leadership traits uh, which make us proud and become a fond memory for life. Would you like to recall any such moment from your childhood? Tell me your story. So I would like to begin with Nandini Ban.
Um, thank you, Gina. That was a very nice introduction. Hello, Richa and Parvati. Thank you for this honor, for being able to speak on a platform that is as interesting and as well respected as this one. Um, I have a very my favorite story from childhood. Really, a lot of children, Bengali children, when we are in our early sort of tweens, our parents kind of think that to be accomplished, you need to learn dancing and singing and art and all that. Unfortunately, I was not good at any of that. But I remember one incident which kind of shaped the way what I became later on in life. This was when I was I think in third grade. And at that time, I have always been a very precautious reader. And my mother was amazing because she always told me that I could read any book I liked, even when she knew that I was punching way above my weight. So at that point, as an 7.5, 8 year old, I was going through Charles Lamb's Six Tales from Shakespeare, and I was quite fascinated by the stories. And I remember at that point I was reading A Merchant of Venice, and this was in class. I was one of the most talkative kids in class, so the teacher decided that the best way to neutralize me was to get me to do something that would shut me up. Basically, if I shut up, the rest of the class would shut up. So so the class was in uproar, so she said, you come to the board. So I walked up to the board and she said, can you sing? So I said, no. She said, can you dance? So I said, no. So she said, can you tell jokes? So I said, no. So she said, then what can you do? So I said, I can tell a story. So she said, well, go ahead. And I was reading, A Merchant of Venice, and I was quite amazed by what Portia did, and I was very impressed by her. So I started telling the story, and the teacher also, after a point, realized what I was doing, so she was interested too. And initially, one or two people in the front benches were listening in, and the rest of the class continued jabbering on. And after a while, I realized, after about 10 minutes, I realized more or less everyone had quietened down. And by the time we came to the three caskets that Bassanio was choosing, there was pin drop silence in the class. And when I finished the story, there was a standing ovation. Everybody was very thrilled. And that's how my journey as a raconteur started. I realized very early on that I was pretty much no good at anything other than telling stories. And later on, I became a journalist because I could tell stories. And now I am a journalist and a writer because I can tell stories. So the reason I quote this incident is because, sometimes it takes a stray encounter to kind of nudge you in the right direction, to tell you that you can find something that you actually enjoy doing and you can make a living out of it, rather than trying to be something that you may not be interested in and therefore will never be good at.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was an interesting story. Coming down to Richa, ma'am, I would like to ask the same question. What is your take on it?
Thank you for that fantastic introduction, Gennia. And it's always an absolute pleasure to be on this platform and have these conversations. I can see, Nandini, why you had the class's attention, because I was smiling and feeling. I mean, walking along with you while you were narrating that, so I can see why you had their attention. As far as just to give you a bit of a context, I hail from, I can go as far as saying a tribe or a clan, not a typical family, because I had three elder sisters. I constantly had a whole barrage of cousins coming and staying with me. It's almost as if they had been evicted from their homes. They were always like, a house was always full. So by virtue of having so many people around me, I always had older kids and adults around me, and I was the youngest. So I think inadvertently, by virtue of this social situation, I think I developed some very essential skills early on in life, which not just, I think, more over and above leadership, I think just help you uh, in life in general. It's a very important life skill to be able to observe and listen and find your place in the world. And before that, you need to find your place in the house, and that happens as and when you interact with everybody around you. So I think I was doing that early on in life without even realizing what was happening around me. But if you ask for a particular instance, something does come to mind. We were a big family that was traveling all the time. And this traveling was fairly templatized, and we were always asked to be in our best behavior. Zyada mat bolo, zyada mat karo, just, because there was a whole bunch of us to control. So we were under strict instructions all the time, even in terms of the amount we ate, because we were told that, leave the best pieces for the people who are coming with you. Don't eat up everything, So there were always, instructions. And I remember this one particular instance when we were traveling to Orcha, which is this lovely historical town in UP. And my mom was, making some purchases. She was very fond of handicrafts, and she was buying some jewelry, some local jewelry. And mental math and me were pretty much an ocean apart at that point in time, just to give you an idea. But what happened was that there was a bill kept in front of me, and for whatever reason, she walked ahead, and she was very, very particular about her finances. But in that particular instant, she didn't calculate it well, and she ended up paying about 500 more than she was supposed to. And just in that moment, I still don't know why I did it, but I looked at it, because this was not my sphere of influence. Nobody was ever asking me about finances or calculating or math in particular. But I looked at it and I noticed, this discrepancy, and I just pointed it out to my mom. They were shocked, but I felt as if I had, conquered the world. I was the president, prime minister, everything all rolled into one. I had done it all in that one particular moment. It didn't matter the sea of people around me. I had made my presence felt, right, by be doing this adult, which is now called adulting, by this doing very adult thing. So it might be inconsequential, in the larger scheme of things, but what it helped me understand in that moment was that there was a cause and effect, that I mattered. My action, there was an immediate reaction to something I chose to do, my observation, and it made a difference. So I think, I'm just psychoanalyzing it now, but I think this is one thing that really stands out in my head that helped me gain a lot of confidence in terms of, my place in the world.
Thank you so much, Richa ma'am. Parvati, would you like to give your take on this particular question?
Yeah, thanks, Gennia, for bringing us all together. And it's amazing to hear the kind of stories that you all have had. If you ask me that, one thing in childhood, then I unfortunately don't have anything to say, because as a child, I was extremely nervous. Okay. Leadership qualities was something that was absolutely, what do you say, zero in me. I was a very shy child, very happy to sit in the background, very happy to be a backbencher, quietly do my work, go around unnoticed. But when I look back now, there was always that urge. There was always a, like, I should always look up to people who were leaders in class, who were, like, doing well and things like that. So my entire school life went, in the shadow of friends, in the shadow of other people. In fact, I was such a nervous child that if the class teacher asked me a question, I would bite my lips. I mean, that is what I was till I was in school. And when I went to college, I just told myself that no, I think it's done. Now I need to really try, give it a shot. And the first instance that I remember, I mean, I wasn't a child, I was about 19 then, was when I had to try out for the debating society, and sorry, for the theater society. And the teacher told me, go up on stage and audition. And here I was literally shivering. I was shivering and shaking. And I was like, what do you want me to do? She will just do anything. So I was like, what do I do? She's like, okay, sing a song. I was like, I can't sing. So she said, recite a nursery rhyme. So I went on stage and I was doing Baba Black Sheep on stage. And I had everyone, like, I had everyone clapping for me. And that is when I felt that, that is when I opened up. But over the years, when I see my journey as a leader, and see myself as, in different roles, I do remember that, I think the seeds of leadership were actually sowed when I was a child, watching my teachers, watching my principal, watching, people around me, watching the women in my family, how they would take decisions, how when there was chaos, how, immediately they come into the forefront and, they manage the situation. So I think if you're looking at childhood, that is, I think, that is something that always strikes me, that how, even though I was a very nervous and, very quiet child, I picked up a lot, and that later came to use. So that's why, when people say that, ye to bacha bolta nahi hai, bacha kuch karta nahi hai, in my mind, I'm laughing. I'm like, dude, you don't know what I was. So, I mean, today I can go onto stage and talk to 500 people without any fear. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. I guess there are certain incidents in childhood which really let us open up and bloom into what we are today, and you already had gone through. So, leadership was already there. It just needed a bit of a spur to let it out. Coming to the next question of the session, How would you define leadership in children? And what qualities or behaviors do you associate with it? Please tell us with reference to your observation of children today, which you think are better qualities than the adults raising them. I would like to begin this time with Richa ma'am.
I am sorry I lost you. Did you say, did you mention me? Because you were frozen.
Yes, yes,
Okay, okay.
yes.
My turn.
Should I repeat the question?
No, I think you were talking about leadership skills and, and
In
juxtaposing it,
children.
I mean, in context of today's children and all of that. So I think there's a
Oh
couple of
yes,
questions in
yes,
there. Yeah.
yes.
So I honestly think that children are that section of the population that are natural born leaders. Because I because of a few factors. I think they don't. They tend to look at things simply and not overanalyze them, which is a plague that all of us are infested with. And sometimes the being able to see things for what they are a very very important quality. I think they are fearless. They're not constantly thinking about what people think of them and what the ramifications of their actions are. So they're fearless, and I don't think they judge too much, right? So I think, and they're risk takers. Their risk assessment capabilities aren't very developed, and I think sometimes that works wonderfully because that's when you fail and that's when you learn. So I think all of these qualities generally, naturally, make them born leaders. But as Parvati was pointing out, it's so true, right? What does leadership mean to a child? And obviously, this is an age appropriate. Older you are, maybe you might have some grasp of it. But essentially, what it means to them is, you get somewhere first. Everybody's behind you. That is an oversimplification, but that's essentially what it could mean to them. But I think it makes its presence felt as far as children are concerned in very subtle ways, in softer ways, and it's not as obvious as it is with adults, right? Because there's black and white. There's no grays. You're leading, you're succeeding. That's why you're a leader. So, for example, the ability to be able to hold somebody's attention. As adults we ramble, I do it all the time. So we to be able to identify a topic, have an interesting or an intelligent conversation with somebody your age group or an adult, to hold someone's attention, to be able to listen as well, which I was talking about, listening and observing, to be able to work in a group. And that seems to be a problem every single day. I keep telling my daughter that you guys are more political than anybody in the center or any other state, because every day they're coming with these problems, and it stems from the fact that they're having to work with people, right? You're having to work in a group. And this is something I've noticed. Maybe it's post pandemic or something. At this age, children are always, it's always about the individual and the self. I'm better, I'm bigger. It's always about that. It's a very physical dominance, that you're always trying to compare yourself with. So being able to work in a group and not just focus on your individual self, and that is also how sometimes they assert their independence and their leadership qualities. And of course, the fact that they can push the boundaries, and if they are able to experiment without upsetting teachers, parents, and that is also a skill. So these are the 4 5 ways in which it might not be overt or in your face, but these are the softer ways in which kids express their leadership qualities. And as far as kids of this day and age are concerned, I honestly think, much like many other parents, we've labeled and straight jacketed them already. They're a lazy bunch. They're entitled. They're disobedient. God knows the way they dress. They have no manners. Tamiz nahi hai. That's the one thing I keep hearing from everyone. And valid as some of these, factors and these problems are, sometimes I have to remind myself that these are born at the, as a function of so many factors, of the fact that they are born in this kind of environment, and the fact that our parenting also plays a role, because all the stimulus and the changes that we have been subjected to, that reflects in our parenting as well. So all of these behaviors have been born at the confluence of that in some way. It's not like they were from their diapers, they've just been different and entitled and asking for things that come easily. So yes, there are things to work on, and I think parents are trying in their own way. But some admirable qualities that I've also noticed are the fact that they're generally a more aware bunch. They are born in an environment which is, which is transitory. There's so many changes, whether it is to do with climate, whether it's to do with technology. There's so much happening around them. At this age, I was possibly looking at the next, strawberry eraser, scented eraser I would get, or how I'd cover my books. And my daughter talks about, crazy things that are happening around the world. So awareness levels are wonderful, and as a result of that, they're very adaptive as well. You know how to wrangle the parents, twist the parents around, teachers around their fingers, take feedback as and when, whatever suits their fancy, or technology, as I was speaking about. So they're very adaptive as well. And something that I feel really heartened with is the fact that I feel that they are being taught to be a little more empathetic. They might not listen to us at home and drive us up the wall, but they are being, even schools play a big part in the fact that they are being more made to be more empathetic about, things that are happening around them, and how their actions can influence communities, the world at large. So they're being made to think about these things, which makes them. So these are a few admirable qualities, and the ones that we need to fix, I guess, we'll work on a daily basis.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. I would like to ask the same question to Nandini, ma'am. Ma'am, how would you define leadership in children, and what are the qualities or behaviors you associated with it? And that'll be better if you, it'll
Um,
be hugely better if you associate with your examples.
Thank you, Richa. That was very interesting, and there are so many points you mentioned which I totally agree with. For me, as a not only as a mum to a teenager, I also teach in the Sri Aurobindo International School, where I interact with kids in the age group of 18 to 21. Now, there, one of the things that I find is very critical, which children of this generation, unfortunately, many of them uh, don't have, or are not equipped with, is the ability to take a knock on your chin, and get up, dust yourself off, and say, "It's okay. I stumbled, I fell, but I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to carry on." Now, this is a factor of many things. Obviously, social media plays a huge role, because it constantly sends out a messaging that the lives of others, from friends to random TikTok strangers, are so much better than anything that you are living, which is not necessarily true. Social media is not real, but as a child, you may not be able to make that difference. But for my generation, at least, and I speak as a generation that is well before all three of you, when the opportunities were not that many, we grew up without a security blanket. We knew that, if you really messed up badly, you had to fend for yourself. There were not that many opportunities. Our parents did not have the wherewithal to give that kind of security blanket. So in many sense, I think my generation, when we were teenagers, we were a tougher lot. We would fall uh, pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and carry on, and think of it as something that, a knock that will teach you how to handle life. And I think that is a very important tenet of leadership, which 21st century kids need to learn, that that it is okay to make mistakes. You can't go through life without making mistakes. Life is about learning from those mistakes. They will be tough. You will have, you will have heartbreak, you'll have disappointments, you will have people not taking you seriously, you will have people not listening to you, you will have people not believing in you. But a true leader is one who learns from all this, picks themselves up, dust themselves off, and are ready to take on the next day. This is something that I keep talking to even my daughter, and also many of the kids who I teach creative writing to. I tell them the same thing. Now, coming to what does this generation have that maybe my generation did not? if we consider ourselves, people who were born in the 60s and 70s, we did not have that. This generation, like Richa was pointing out, they have a kind of a sense of hustle. They know what they want. They're very clear headed about what they want, and they know how to get there. uh, in my generation, that was something that we sort of stumbled through and got a fix on when we were well into our mid 20s. These kids know it by the time they are 12, 13 years old. My daughter, for instance, she's not yet 16. She's 15 and a half, but she's very clear about what she wants to do when she grows up, and where she wants to study and what she wants to do with her life. And this kind of clarity, I don't think I had till I stumbled into my first job as a journalist for Sunday Magazine at age 21. So, this clarity is also something that is very, very appreciable. And that's because of the exposure that these kids have. They are able to take those decisions. They are able to take it with a huge amount of maturity that belies their age. And that is something to be appreciative of.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I very much agree with you that today's generation is much more clear as to what they don't want and what they want. And they are quite ready as to how to get it, what are the means to do it, what are the better ways to do it. Yes, that is worthy of appreciation. I should agree with that. Coming to Parvati, ma'am, what is your take on this particular question?
Well, my take on this question is that this world that we are in today, this 2023, is a very confusing era for, I think, all of us. There's so many things happening, AI happening, there is, so political upheaval, there's a lot happening, okay, right? So it's a very confusing age for us as adults and even for children. So I think in this entire confusion, children themselves right now also caught at a very transit phase, because one point of time we as adults, as parents, are telling them something, because we care for them, we're protective about them, we don't want them to get into what do you say, there's so much on the internet and there's so much of unsafety on the internet that we want to protect them from that. But on the other hand, their world is very different from our world. The world that is coming, the world that is emerging is very different. It's something that you and me are not prepared for at all, but it's something that they are mentally prepared for. We can't understand what is happening and how it's happening. So I think that is where there's a lot of what parents, children nowadays, when you talk to them, they feel is that there's a lot of gap in what as parents we feel their world is and what they believe their world is. Their world, as Richa and Nandini very rightly pointed out, it's a world where they're very confident, they're very independent, they make their choices for better or for worse. They know what they want, they know what they don't want. They don't have patience to sit and mull, like we used to, in our generation, used to sit and think, the pros and the cons, and they don't have the time or the patience for that. Everything is a quick fix. Even if you look at their career choices, they're not very, they don't, nobody right now wants a stable job where you will do a, you have to worry about insecurity and everything. All that children nowadays want is a quick fix. And as Nandini pointed out, this thing for quick fix is something that is worrisome, because when you fall in life, when you face a challenge, there are no quick fixes for it. It's always the hard route out. And that is something I think now schools also have realized, schools and colleges have realized, and there's a lot of emphasis on giving children, like what we call them, life skills. The 21st century skills focuses a lot on life skills, because we need to tell these youngsters that yes, your world is different and it's very different from us, and the world that you're bringing with you is also very different. When we watch it from up and above, it's going to be, we will be like, what the hell are you guys doing? But it's your world and you need to be able to manage it in a particular way. So looking at children right now, nowadays, for them, their qualities of leadership, like for us, it was, they live in a very unsafe world. Okay, so for them, like when we were children, we used to go to the park and play. Our parents used to tell us, go to the park, play. They were always, grandmothers, grandfathers, someone, watching us. But in today's world, they don't have that. If I have to send my 5-year-old down to the park, I need to be there with her, because I'm so scared that something might happen to her. Okay. Or when you talk to other parents, that is happening. So values, their understandings, their way of functioning is very different from ours. So for them right now, leadership means to be able to find solutions to problem, to adjust into the new world that they're coming into. And this entire digital world is their world. And in that is how they find leadership, how they find, how do they manage their, many personalities. There are many personalities on internet. There will be one very good one, there will be one very tame one. So these are things that children nowadays are, like really looking. We need to, I think, somewhere handhold them, and also try and enter their world a little bit to understand it a little bit. So if you're talking about children in today's world, I think this is something which is very critical for us as adults and parents, and children, to kind of bridge the gap. There is a big gap that is happening, and a lot of children are falling in that gap. That's why you see suicide rates going up, so much of, young children, teenage children getting into conflict, not only in India, in America, everywhere you see. Even nowadays, when you see the newspaper, there are things about, I mean, it's so easy to take a life. People chopping people up and putting them in packets. I mean, it's the world is getting to a place where, if we as adults, I feel that we don't bridge this gap, this communication gap between their world and our world, then there's going to be a lot of isolation. And then obviously then their mental health issues that they end up dealing with. And hence, so that's why I think it's very important for us right now as adults to really understand their world, and in that world give them the life skills that help them become really empathetic, compassionate, leaders who take people together, and don't work in isolation, and it's not only I, me and myself, and like Richa pointed out, that we feel they're entitled. So that is how we really need to handhold them. That's
Thank you so much, Parvati. Yes, that point should also be taken into consideration given the current circumstances we are living in. So, yes. Moving on to the next question of the session. Sometimes leadership spirits in children go unobserved or are neglected by the elders. This even leads to the kids getting scolded for applying their minds to do something new. In your opinion, what are some of the key factors that adults should be careful about while nurturing leadership spirit in children? I would like to begin this time with Nandini ma'am.
Thank you. That's a very, very interesting question, because as adults, we do two things which are directly which sort of directly are at odds with each other. On the one hand, we as 21st century adults, we are constantly telling children that you have to have your own mind, you have to think for yourself, think for yourself. We are constantly encouraging them to do so. But when it comes to choices, I am not very sure the adult world is ready for the choices that children may make. And that is a dichotomy that we as the grown-ups in the world of children will have to sort out if we want a generation that is able to take on the knocks of life, and to be able to lead us into the future. I'll give an example of this. Typically in, and this if you have children, or if you're teachers, you this is a very typical scenario when you're teaching something, particularly when I teach literature, for instance. My idea is always to ask children for their opinion. What do you think? What does the story make you feel like? Very often children turn around and say, Nandini, we don't like the story. That was lame. Or, oh, that was ew, that was dark, that was gross, that was this. Now, my instinct always is to say, how can you not like this story? The story has been written by Salman Rushdie, or it has been written by Jhumpa Lahiri. I mean, I love it. How can you not like this? But that's the adult sort of canceling coming in. I have to consciously tell myself, no. Literature is all about how every individual reacts, and it's okay. Every person reacts to the written word differently. I'll give my daughter's example again. I loved reading Harry Potter. My husband, as a gift, birthday gift, bought me the entire set. I mean, and people used to laugh that it's a book meant for children. Why do you love it? I love it. I love reading the books. My daughter hates it. She's read the first three. She will not be induced to read it. I mean, she doesn't like it. It's okay. I used to feel very bad. I loved Enid Blyton. I grew up reading Enid Blyton, you know, all the Mallory Towers and Five Fine Doubters and Secret Seven. My daughter didn't like it. She read a couple of Secret Sevens. She read a couple of Famous Fives. No, she didn't like it. So you know, for me, for the longest time, I was in denial. I said, you know, how can you not like it? You know, just trust me, trust my instincts. You know, just continue. You will. I had to stop myself from doing that because I realized she and I are not the same. She likes books which I don't like. You know, uh, her generation likes books which I don't like. And there are some books which I like, which she likes. I'm very proud to say that one of my favorite books is Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy. And my daughter started reading it at age 14. She's still continuing. I mean, it is 1300 pages after all. But she's at least read 600 out of those 1300. And it's okay. You know, she likes Lata and Kabir's story just as I did. It's all right. It doesn't mean that everything I liked or everything I thought was important will be sort of echoed by the next generation. And this is, I think, a lesson that the grown-ups around children need to learn, and need to learn very quickly, because this generation does have very specific ideas about what they want to be, about what they want their world to be. And the sooner that the grown-ups around them respect them as individuals, and allow them to voice those ideas, the better leaders these kids will be.
Thank you so much, Nandini ma'am. Yes, even my niece doesn't like Enid Blyton. So yes, somewhere in my heart I'm disappointed. But yes, I don't poke her even. I don't poke her. She's her own person. I'm my own. We have different choices. Coming with the same question to Parvati. Parvati, how do you take this question?
Well, I also kind of agree that one thing, like as Nandini pointed out, is that as adults, we need to give children a lot of respect. Respect not in terms of, just, like, okay, sit, in the way we talk to them, but also respecting their ideas and their opinions. Because as we all agree that this generation's, they have a mind of their own. And if you want them to listen to you, if you want them to, you want to be a part of their world, you don't want to feel isolated, it's very important that they feel and you actually genuinely respect what they're feeling, what they're saying. And another mistake that when we disrespect them is we kind of shut them off. We tell them that I know more, I've seen more of the world, tumhe kya pata duniya ke bare mein. But actually, if you look at it in today's world, sitting in 2023, we don't know about unke world. We don't know about their world. Okay, they can actually shut up and turn around and tell us, shut up, you don't know what is happening in our world. So that's the world is changing, and the way we as parents we look at children has to change. We must give them that respect. We must be able to hear them. And we I think more than more, as adults, I think one thing that we need to have is a lot of courage. A lot of courage to accept and embrace this difference. Because the world is different now. Gender identities are becoming different. People's identities, the career choices, everything is becoming very different. As adults, if we do not have courage to accept, to have an open heart and to embrace them, trust me, we'll lose it. We lose this game that we're trying as adults to try to bring them up to be capable citizens, to be good people, to be good human beings. So it's very important. One is that we respect them, and secondly, as adults, we have the courage to accept and to embrace a lot of this new world that's coming in. So that's what I want to add to that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So, yes, change is the only constant in our life that we need to imbibe. Coming finally to Richa, ma'am. Ma'am, what is your take on this particular question?
When Nandini was speaking, I was just smiling like a Cheshire cat, and I just kept giggling because it just brought home so many instances of, when she was talking about how can you. So I know there are many forms of parenting these days, and you can write reams and reams about it. There's gentle parenting, and there's snowplow parenting, and there's God knows what kinds of parenting. I think I belong to this tribe called How Can You Parenting, much like Nandini, because you know what? And this is again something that Parvati was saying earlier, the generational gap, right? My mom-in-law keeps telling me that, we are the sandwich generation. And I've pointed out to her that no, you are not the sandwich generation. We are the sandwich generation because we have seen the old guard and we have seen, what this, this generation is capable of, and the opportunities. And we are the, I also call us the floppy disk generation, that have seen, both ends of the spectrum. And to us, things like aankhon ki sharam, and respect, and this, that, and the other, you know these are alien concepts to them. And they might see it around them in the families and all of that, but to actually, you know um, expect them to understand the depth and the, the importance of these concepts, which took us years to understand, which we finally understood as parents, and now we're expecting our children to do the same. Like, I was listening to Sadhguru the other day, and he mentioned this very interesting thing about children. So the lady across him asked him that, how do I raise my child? So he said, darling lady, you don't have to raise your child, they're not cattle. You have to cultivate them, you have to guide them. So I found that really interesting, because I think it's not just Indian parents, but parents generally feel the need to, they have a penchant for, and it all comes from a well intentioned space, to sermonize, to, give advice, to mollycoddle. We're asking them to push the boundaries and learn, yet we want to stay, we want them to stay within the Lakshman Rekha. So a lot of these confusing messages go out to children. And incidentally, I remember just this morning, I said something. I said, and I feel that I'm being the best parent on earth. I'm a rock star parent. And I was telling her something. And in a little squeaky voice, my child turns around and said, oh, the pravachan begins. So I was like, basically, which is a religious discourse. So I just turned around and I looked at my husband. I said, did she just like give me lip? Did she just say I'm sermonizing and giving her pravachans? So, you feel incensed that how can she speak to me like that when I didn't ever do that to my parents? But I think what we need to do is firstly listen, to respect their boundaries, allow them to ask questions, and not be affronted when they do. Because I think this is something I'm learning on a daily basis myself. And something I also remind myself to do is have the patience, because only with patience will communication and dialogues happen. Because if you're just too consumed by, what the way I like things, communication is never going to happen, and they're never truly going to understand what you expect of them, and you will never understand, vice versa.
Yes, thank you so much. Coming to the next question of the session, that is, would each of you share two activities that you practice personally, which are effective in developing leadership traits in children? What would you, means, what would be your story behind choosing these activities? I would like to begin again this time with Parvati.
So, I think the one thing that I definitely do practice, especially when children are around, is the habit of saying thank you. To anyone, be it, the rickshaw wala or the sabzi wala or the lady who comes to help at home, or, any family member, someone gives something, the habit of saying thank you. Because I think for leaders, it's very important that you are able to appreciate and, be able to see have some gratitude in your heart. Okay, so that is one thing I definitely do practice. The other thing, which I remember an incident which had happened in one of our, I work with the, children, I work in children's homes, children, underprivileged children, we have these shelter homes. So I remember one incident where there was this one home for girls. And every day, the home superintendent, one day she called me, we were talking, she was like, looking at a pot, of Gamla. And I was like, "Kya hua?" So she was like, no, I'm noticing that, someone's putting bread in this every day. Okay. So I said, yeah, must have happened by mistake. So, then I was like, okay, well, observe and see what is happening. Then one day she came early and she realized that one of the girls, before going to school, she was putting bread in the pots, in all the pots, she's putting bread. So then immediately this lady didn't tell her anything, didn't think. So when she came back from school, we just were chatting. We asked how was school. So we took her there and we asked her, why are you doing this? So what she told her and said, she was like, Didi, सब हम लोग सब खाना खाते हैं, हम भी पानी पीते हैं, लेकिन बेचारे पौधों को तो कोई खाना नहीं देता, उनको सिर्फ पानी देके छोड़ देते हैं. Okay, so that was her way of looking at the world. But what I learned from there, okay, and what I learned basically from my colleague, was she didn't chide the child, saying, "अरे क्या बेवकूफी है, पौधे थोड़ी खाना खाते हैं." But so what I feel, one thing which I've practiced ever since that one day is that to listen to children and not to judge them immediately. In my head, I could be judging for all I care, but not, you know, telling them or shutting them down, saying, you're tum bevkoof ho. This is something what you said is very stupid. If they said it, take it, smile, talk about it. Maybe later, if it is, drastically or ethically wrong, take it up later. But let's not blow it up and, sabke samne make a, ridicule the child. So these are two things which, I always do keep in mind when I'm, around children, especially.
Um, I guess Parvati went offline. I'm really sorry for that. I guess she had something more to say, but since it's just a gap now, so I would like to ask the same question to Nandini ma'am. Ma'am, what will be your take on this particular question? Means, what are the two activities? And I would ask the same question once Parvati is back, so she's not exempted from the same thing.
A couple of months ago, there was a situation when I was really stressed out. This is a personal experience that I wanted to share. I was really stressed out because my maids were all on leave. I have two dogs. I love them. They were unwell, and my daughter and I were alone at home. In the middle of the night, one of the dogs started vomiting. So I called my daughter, and I started crying. I was like, the stress, and there was stress in office. So all of it sort of added up, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was messaging the vet. He was not looking at the messages as is normal. I mean, I realized. But I when my daughter came to my room, she found me crying. Um, and she immediately said, I said, this is what has happened. There is nobody at home tomorrow. It was Christmas time. So I said, tomorrow it's Christmas. No one is going to come to work. I don't know what to do. I don't know whether the vet will come. She said, don't worry. I'm messaging my school. Her school is not closed for Christmas. So she messaged, she said, I'm telling them I'm not going to go. And she immediately went and messaged, and she helped me clean up and all of that. Now, what that taught me initially, what I felt was shame. I felt a sense of shame. I felt that as a parent, I had failed because I cracked under pressure. But later on, when I looked on this incident that happened, I actually felt that I did the right thing. Very often we as grown ups or parents try to show ourselves as superhumans, that we've got it all together, we've got it sorted. You don't worry about it. Mom and dad have it sorted. But children are not fools. They know that mom and dad are struggling with work pressure, maybe health issues. Very often our generation is also looking after aging parents, and so on. So there is a lot of pressure that mom and dad go through, and I feel that to make yourself vulnerable is okay. It is a very important leadership lesson, because that child will grow up thinking it's okay to cry. It is okay to say, I am stressed out. It is okay to say, I don't have it under control. I don't. I'm drowning here. Help me. It is okay. It is okay to say all of that, because we are not superhuman. And there is no reason to give your child this kind of absolutely bizarre, skewed, image of yourself that you got it all under control. It's okay to say, I don't. Help me. So so that, I think, is also part of leadership. That's one. The second thing I also feel, and this I feel very strongly about, as a writer, I have a lot of mothers and fathers also occasionally, but mostly mothers, who will walk up to me and say, how do I get my child to read? How do you make them read? Children don't like to read. They are addicted to screens. And my response to them is, children, no matter what you tell them, what is coming out of your mouth, they don't hear it. They will do as you do. If you read, they'll read. If you're kind, they'll be kind. If you love animals, they'll love animals. If you like bright colors, they'll like bright colors. It's just what you do, it's not what you say. So if you want them to be nice rather than feeling important, maybe you should start with being nice and not being important for a change. That is also being a leader, because in a sense, if you look at our family as a pack, and I'm a dog lover, so I'm going to give this dog metaphor. If you're a pack, then pretty much the mum is the leader of the pack. The dad is the the good cop. The dad is there to lick you into shape, and and do all that. But basically, the leader of the pack is the mum. And if the mom says that, this is the way I am, I believe it is important to be kind. I believe the most important thing is not success, but the fact that you have given your best. Those are things, if the parents follow that, the children will imbibe. That's leadership too. Leadership by practicing what you're preaching.
Yes. So we need to be so it's like a mirror stage for us. They means they will be emulating whatever we will be doing. So it's a mirror stage at a grown up stage. Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Coming to Richa, ma'am, what is your take on this particular question?
So something very important I wanted to highlight is something that Nandini's already covered. The fact, that um, knowing that adults don't always have it under control is very important, in being able to show that you're vulnerable, because them correlating that a certain situation will elicit a certain set of emotions, and it all doesn't need to be swept under the carpet. And being vulnerable is very important in this world as well. In addition to that, I just have a couple of quick points. One is the fact that I've realized that I can empower her by giving her ownership in difficult situations. So the difficult situations for a 9-year-old, to us it might seem trivial, but the fact that she's having to choose between friends who don't get along, the fact that she has some classes and some social activities that she wants to be a part of, but she can't have it all, right? So instead of help, I mean, of course I'll give her my advice, which I'm always happy to solicit it or otherwise, but I try and just let her make those decisions, because she needs, it lends a sense of accountability, because she knows that there's a cause and effect in terms of actions and the choices that you make. And I think that is also something very important, you know in life or in leadership, whichever way. You have to make the difficult decisions, and enabling them at a very early juncture in their lives adds to that kind of confidence of their sense of self as well. In addition to that, I think the ladies have covered it perfectly already, but I think we wait. As far as finances and current affairs is concerned, this is a more practical one. We wait. We assume that with school and aage jaake there'll be enough time. But I honestly think that inculcating an understanding of finances and economics and current affairs in a very age appropriate fashion very early on in life, you know, uh, kind of lends itself to them being not treating these as very alien concepts. And especially when it comes to girls, I think it's so important to understand finances and know that this is a matter which is just like, mama doesn't just belong in the kitchen and she does so much else, and papa's also doing everything. They need to understand that finances and understanding the world and what's happening around is important. So for example, simple things like which I'm sure a lot of parents do, letting her handle the groceries and the payment, taking the change back, understanding that what is the power of money, what does it mean on a daily basis, where does it come from, functionings of ATMs and this, that, and the other. In addition to that, when we're traveling, we get these currency notes and we talk to her about how does the world work in terms of businesses and the economy, obviously in an age appropriate way. And I cannot function without I'm old school. I cannot function without my newspapers. So while the world runs to Twitter and everything, every morning you'll see me with my glasses and my chai, just lost behind the paper. So this is like, you were just mentioning, she's imbibed this and she cannot do without the paper either. I realized that I have to get her an age appropriate paper which is not talking about chopping up people and people dying and evaporating in thin air. So I subscribe to some newspapers that that are available to her in the morning as well. So I just feel that this is again something that they pick up from us. A general sense of awareness and understanding of the world around them equips them to be well informed and leaders, adults, just human beings, and it really helps in the long run.
Thank you, Richa. I would like to return to Parvati. I guess the technical glitch had taken away the second point that you wanted to say, so I would like you to continue on that.
Well, like I was actually just going to say what Richa and Nandini said, that it's like monkey see, monkey do, is like children learn from us as adults what we do. What if I want my child to behave in an X manner and have X values, then I in my behavior also need to exhibit it. It's like we were talking, like once had gone to a school and we were talking to children about safety, and we were talking to children about different safeties, and we were on the topic of road safety. And where one we saw that the children looked a little confused, and we asked what is the problem. So one smart little fellow raised his hand and said, but मेरे पापा तो सिग्नल तोड़ देते हैं, हमेशा तोड़ते हैं. I mean, why are you saying it's wrong? So is my father wrong? He was a little taken aback, and he was a little hurt, the little fellow, that my dad was wrong. That is something that I'm not supposed to do. So then we had to tell them, yes, please go back and tell your father that he's not supposed to break signals and drive rashly. So these are things that children see. They're like, okay, it's normal. I mean, that's how it's done. So yeah, that is the other point I was going to add, that as how we want them to be, we have to behave also in that way, practice what we preach.
Thank you so much. Now, moving on to the next question of the session, which is obviously going to be very individual focused. I would like to begin with Richa, ma'am. Ma'am, you write a genre that has one step in comedy and another in thriller. The so called unsophisticated and uncouth in a rural backdrop finds great representation in your stories, along with fabulous leadership traits in every character. Is this an Indian talking about cultural leadership of our country, or a woman representing women's leadership at the grassroots, or a mother trying to open the mind and break some colonial taboos?
Very interesting question. And at the expense of sounding like a fence sitter, I would say my first response would be none of the above, because I think as a storyteller, my first and foremost job is to write evocative, compelling, interesting and relatable stories. And in that sense, when I'm embarking on writing a new story or a book, it's not as if I sit and highlight, a list of social evils or a social commentary that I need to make, right? Uh, so it's not an express intention, but a big resounding yes as well to all the themes that you mentioned, because as someone who has gone through life either observing these kind of behaviors or these kind of these factors, or have experienced it myself, they have affected me, and as a result they have percolated into my writing. uh, the fact that you're speaking of the kind of stories I write and the people I try to represent, it's all, I've always been fascinated by this fact that this is a function of I think being in a post-colonial society where, as far as I can remember, things have changed now, but we've always has had we've always looked westwards for clues in terms of how to live, how to consume, how the kind of lifestyle they live, reading habits, everything. It seems to come from the be dictated by the West. This even extended to thrillers. I remember writing this a very interesting article for the Hindu, where I had mentioned that the antecedents of the thriller genre can be traced back to India. In fact, Kolkata, back to the 1800s, and yet we think that it's all from the West. And honestly speaking, literature to me always was an all-encompassing, all-accepting space, which should not be dictated by geography or gender, but this is the reality of our times. And if I write meaty, hearty stories representing characters and conversations from every nook and cranny of our country, it is just my small effort to highlight the depth and diversity and the wonderful quality of stories that belong, that come out of our country, and the various people who represent these stories. So this is just my, I guess, conscious or subconscious effort to represent people from various social milieux across the country, and make some interesting storytelling come from there. Even the fact that you mentioned that the women that I portray in my books, I personally believe that if you're independent minded, if you have a if you have a flair and a will, then irrespective of the social structure or the strata of society you hail from, you can make your voice heard and you can make your presence felt. And this is something that I have seen, I have instilled in the women that I represent in my books as well. So whether it's my first book, which was, I mean, I'm loath to admit, but it was autobiographical in a sense. I never admitted this to my mom-in-law, but I'm saying this now. It was about accidental pregnancy. There was Tara, who was told that her life comes to an absolute screeching halt just because she's pregnant. And it was a story about how she reintegrates herself. And it's not as if she has horns and she's back to her life. Whether it's Excess Baggage, which is a story about a mother and a daughter who are divorcee women who are labeled as, people achoots in society, and, how they go about, living their lives on their own terms. Or in Kanpur Khufia Private Limited, it's all about women who are part of a very traditional setup, yet they are the ones who are ruling the roost, right? Whether it's this 87-year-old doyen of the household who's chewing pan all the time, the grandmom, or the achar making queen, the mother, or even Vidya Tripathi, who's the wife of the detective, but she's the one who takes all the meaty decisions. So I honestly think that we don't choose the circumstances and the that we come from, but we can, I think, through my stories, I've just tried to project that these are not perfect families, these are not perfect situations, but these are women who can speak their mind and who can make things happen. And I hope that that comes across. And of course, all of this has been enveloped in mischievous humor, because I tend to write humorously across genres, and because I genuinely feel that humor makes life palatable and far more interesting.
Thank you so much. Yes, humor does ease a lot of things in our life, thereby making it livable. Coming to the next question, Parvati, you are exposed to children in various vulnerable and distressed situations. A lot changes in the personality or outlook of children in such cases, which affect not just them but the future of a country too. Not every individual is working with them directly like you do. So, how can such people who are busy with lives and careers in other sectors engage, help, and be of use to the underprivileged children other than donating money to charitable institutions?
So this is a very good question. This is something that people do ask quite a bit. One way, I mean, money is not always what charitable organizations want. There is a big dearth of people who genuinely and responsibly want to volunteer. There's a lot of people who come to volunteer just for a day, make it like a photo opportunity kind of a thing. But that is not what people are looking for. A lot of NGOs are looking for people who will genuinely dedicate and responsibly work with them. You can do, and there's a lot you can do when you're volunteering. Your time is the most precious thing that you can give, right? You can volunteer to teach, you can volunteer and not only teach academic stuff, you can volunteer to teach anything, like art, design, painting, music, anything you can teach, spoken English. There's a lot you can contribute. All of us have a particular skill set, which comes to use for for the organizations. If you feel you can't teach, you're not, sometimes not everyone's comfortable directly interacting with children. Then there's a lot of work in the administration of the organization, like for example helping out with social media, or helping, a lot of NGOs do face need help in, like if you're a HR person, you can come in and help make the HR guidelines. Okay, if you're a person who's worked in management, you can come in and help, give some good management ideas. There's a lot of way with whatever skill set you have, you can volunteer and help the organization grow, help reach out to more children. So that is one. The other way that you can always help is, one is that being a bit sensitive to the issues. It's not, I mean, one is volunteering, one being empathetic. one wanting to do something. The other is consciously also being kind and alert, because a lot of cases where we've seen children have been rescued and children have been saved from very dire circumstances is when a lay citizen has been alert, like has seen has noted that this child looks in trouble, has alerted the police, has alerted the 1098 children's helpline number. These are times, this is another way in which you can really help, protecting and contributing to these children, being alert, being sensitive yourself. Every child who is in a particular situation is not in that situation because of his or own will, right? There are circumstances that have put the child in that situation. So it's important as adults, one is that we be sensitive and be alert. Secondly is also to teach, the generation that is coming, teach them also to be empathetic and to understand that if I am privileged, if I have XYZ benefit and luxuries, someone else doesn't have, I don't need not look down on that person. I need not help, but I need not be cruel to that person also. It's important for us to teach the coming generation also how to be kind. You don't always have to do something. You can just simply be kind in your action, in your way, the way you communicate with these children. When you see them on the road, when you see them in a pub, when you see them, or when you pass a slum, just being kind in your action. These, I think, are the three most important ways. One is to volunteer your time, share your skills with organizations, and organizations are more than happy to take it. Like we said, we do get a lot of people who come to us who have, like what we call the rescuer syndrome or the savior syndrome, that, I want to come to save, work with a child. But that's a very top down way of looking at the situation, which then makes, it's very cringeworthy. It makes, the child only feel odd. And I do remember that, once there was this family who had come to a children's home and was celebrating their, small little girl's birthday, and they got cake and they got goodies for the girls, and everything was nice. And I was just watching from a distance, and the grandmother was with the birthday girl. And when they were leaving, she tells the child, see, देखो, अगर तुम ऐसे तुमने बात हमारी नहीं मानी ना, हम तुमको ऐसे होम में छोड़ देंगे. So that entire event, which was so beautiful, where all the children interacted with them, they interacted with the children. The birthday girl was very happy. But imagine that one statement, how it kind of just burst the balloon. It left such a bad taste in the mouth. And then I had to stop the grandmother and say that please don't tell her this. This is not a jail for these children. This is their home. Okay. So it's important to be kind ourselves and to also teach our children to be kind. I think if we can do these, that is one way without donating money where we can really contribute to make a difference in this world.
Well, that struck a chord, particularly the way the child was treated, and how it's heart wrenching that children have to go through. Uh, but on a lighter note, let's push this discussion forward. Coming to the question for Nandini ma'am. Ma'am, you have been working on Indian history and culture, looking into the past from various perspectives. With reference to your books, would you please tell us about the culture of Indian leadership that has traveled across the ages and the legacy that has been created by our glorious ancestors?
Uh, yeah, this is a question right after my heart, because I'm a history nut. I'm a history evangelist. So one of my books that came out in 2019 was this book called The Story of Kalidas, a gem among poets. And that book is it's a very interesting book because it looks at Mahakavi Kalidas, who was undoubtedly ancient India's most celebrated literary figure. But what I've tried to do is show through the life of Kalidas what true leadership is all about. Kalidas's life shows how he was bullied as a child. He was considered the village idiot, but he, picks himself up, dusts himself down, teaches himself to read, write, and then, to become so immersed in his scholarship that he is ahead of everybody else in the Gurukul. And then when he starts writing, he writes such amazing poetry and such amazing plays that he's celebrated all over the world. But the most interesting point in that was that throughout his journey from the village idiot to the most celebrated poet in the ancient world, what set him aside, what set Kalidas aside was not just his brilliance. You know, a lot of people are brilliant. What set him aside was his humility. And this is something that I keep telling a lot of children, you know, when I talk to them, that it's nice to be important. When you are talking to, you're looking at social media is constantly stressing the importance of success. We live in a world where success is very, very important. It is underlined, it is emphasized at every level. But while it is nice to be important, it is far more important to be just plain nice, you know. And this, the humility, the truly great have humility. The mediocre don't. So, you know, so with great leadership comes great humility. The greatest gurus of our land would always say, what I know is that I know nothing." You know, this is also what Socrates said so many centuries and millennia ago, that I know that I know nothing. And with that starts your journey towards real knowledge. When you have the humility to accept that you don't know, that you cannot always know everything, you know. So that is a very beautiful message, and I like to always talk about the story of Kalidas, because this book sort of talks about an actual historical figure. But moving on from there, you know, I've also written about the Gupta empires, the Gupta emperors, the Gupta Empire trilogy, where I talk about, you know, the three books. The heroes are Chandragupta, Vikramaditya, Samudragupta, and Skandagupta. And again, you know, the qualities, of course, all three of them were famous, celebrated warriors. Samudragupta, for instance, remained unvanquished all through. He fought some 60, 70 battles, and he conquered most of peninsular India, but he remained unvanquished. But what sets him apart, and again, you know, there are lots of examples of great warriors. It's not so difficult to become a celebrated warrior. What sets Samudragupta and people like Chandragupta apart is their love of the arts. Samudragupta, if you look at his coins, you know, you will have as many of them where he is holding, like the archer type coins where he's holding a bow and arrow, as you will have him playing the lyre, you know. And similarly, Chandragupta Vikramaditya was as known for his military exploits as he was known for his love of scholarship. And Kalidasa was one of his Navratnas, or nine gems. So it is not enough to be just a good king militarily, in terms of governance, in terms of efficiency. It is also important to understand what it is that you're fighting for. You know, if you do not have a love of the finer things of life, the love of words, the love of art, the love of beauty, if you don't have that, then what are you fighting for? You know, and that is something that is so beautifully enunciated by some of the more well-known kings from ancient India, and it has been my honor and privilege to write about them. And finally, you know, I want to talk about my latest book and my most iconic and most inspirational historical figure, Virangana Durgavati. Durgavati is interesting because she is a woman monarch, but she's such a kick-ass monarch. You know, she breaks all the gender rules or gender stereotypes expected of a medieval queen, you know, at every point in time. And today, as 21st century women, you know, we feel very privileged to say, I'm a feminist, I believe in choice. But 500 years ago, this lady, who was a Central Indian queen, was actually living that choice, you know, that I am going to marry the man I want, even if, you know, it is an intercaste marriage and not approved by my father. I am going to have the family that I want. I am going to, once her husband dies, she throws off parda and she takes over the reins of the government. She runs her kingdom so efficiently and so well that her people not only revere her, they turn her into a goddess. To this day, she's worshipped as a goddess. You know, you can imagine the extent of love and devotion that these primarily tribal people had for a princess who was originally a Chandel Rajput princess. So they not only make her their own, they make her a goddess that they worship to this day. But the most important lesson she gives is the lesson she gives in battle. When she's cornered in battle and she realizes that the battle is lost, there is no escape route, there is no way she can live to fight another day, she kills herself. Because why does she do so? Because death before dishonor. There is nothing more important than living for your dharma. And that, I think, is the finest tenet of leadership. That when you can say that I have lived my life according to my dharma and I have lived it to the best of my abilities. It doesn't matter whether I'm a super successful startup entrepreneur, whether I'm a, best-selling author who sells 1 million copies, or whether I'm a super successful cricketer or politician or whatever. What makes you a leader is not your success. What makes you a leader is how you lead your life.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Finally, coming to the very last question of the session, and that will be the end of all. If you were a Santa, what would you tell children of today? And I'll ask this to Richa, ma'am.
Firstly, if I was a Santa, I think the woke children of today would say, "Stop being presumptuous, Santa, about knowing what I want. Go back to the North Pole." So I really don't think I'll be able to figure it out. But if they were to grant me an audience, I would. This is again something that I think Nandini mentioned earlier. The fact that making mistakes and failing is not the end of the world. Because I've seen such an abhorrence to this entire concept of failure and not being able to do something. Was recently listening to Piers Morgan, and he was just saying something very interesting, that it almost feels as if, and because he was referring to the amount of medication, that the US and a lot of people in Canada are taking, and Europe they're taking, and even in India now, for mental health issues, and these mental health terms have now become, have merged into the common parlance, and they're using it very casually. He said that it almost feels as if the children of this generation want to go through life without feeling the absence of anything, or feeling without feeling any pain, right? So I think they really hold on to, for all the reasons that we discussed. I think they associate I guess the lack of normalcy after, you failed with a state of affairs where you failed at doing something, and it's almost as if they feel so despondent that you can't get up from there. So I think by virtue of being vulnerable, by accepting every single day that, we make horrid mistakes on a daily basis, as parents, as, as professionals, as people, I think that is something very important, to keep reminding them that it's absolutely important to suck at stuff, and, and live a fairly good life. You can't excel at everything, and you need to show them that. And I think in addition to that, it's something that we have all been trained to do. Any situation, whether you're nervous, whether you're irritated or happy, smile, smile. And it's something that really irritates me, because haso, smile. It's really annoying when, you're feeling a certain way and somebody's constantly, we're all like good Indian children, we're asked to, like, just always smile, smile, and everything will be fine. So I keep reminding my, I'm sorry for this being comical, but yeah, I mean, I always describe this to my child, saying that, you know what, I understand that, older generation will always ask you the same things, haso beta and all of that. See that happening a lot to the grandparents as well. But what's important is not to grin like grin all the time. What's important is that on the inside, you need to feel calm and composed and, content on the inside. If you're feeling happy here, that's good enough. You don't need to prove it to anyone, and constantly being happy is not a requirement, because I think to a certain, after a certain level, it becomes, being positive and being happy is too much of a pressure. So it's important to, just be a little, I can't, I try and explain it to her by using simpler words, by saying, equanimous. And it's one of my favorite words in from the Upanishads. It's called sthita pragya. I love that, because, it describes a state of affairs when, when your mind and your heart can be like this, and with every passing boat, your waters don't become turbulent along with them. So it's not about expressing outward happiness. It's about being, happy and calm on the inside. So these are my two bits. And after this, spiritual Santa is going to be sent way back to North Pole.
Coming to the same question, and I would like to say, pose the same question to Parvati. Parvati, what would you do if you were a Santa?
Well, with this generation, as Richa pointed, out, it's very difficult to kind of assess what would I do. I mean, would make them happy because like when Santa gave us gifts, we became happy. So this is again assuming that this would make them happy. I think what I would give them is the ability to be happy in nature, with the simple things of life. Like for example, like we like as children we used to travel a lot. We used to eat mangoes with our hands. We used to you know enjoy nature so much. When there was rain, we used to make paper boats, in the flood water. We used to enjoy the rains, like go splash in the rains, spend some time with nature. If I could, I think that is something which I feel is very missing in their lives. So this is a Santa not giving them what they want, but Santa giving them, again, being the parent, being an adult, giving them what I think they would they would want or they need. Yeah.
Ma'am, Nandini ma'am, I would pose the same question to you. What would be your take?
So, so if I were to play Santa, I would tell them, first of all, that, you guys do realize that I am a fat man in a red suit, um, living in the coldest part of the earth, surrounded by people who are jabbering in a language I don't understand, and giving gifts to a bunch of kids who don't believe in me. So don't think my job is the best job in the world. It sucks. So if you think that your day is sucking, think of me. I am the ultimate gold standard in a job that sucks. But having said that, if I were to, as Santa, I were to give one gift uh, to children, and this is like really serious thing which I don't think parents talk about enough. From a very small age, I think children should be told, take responsibility for your actions. If you are doing something, you have to take the consequence. It is not okay as a child to go and hit a puppy. It is not okay as a child to hit your mom. It's not okay. Whether you are a child, whether you are a teenager, whether you're an adult, there are certain things that are not okay. And if you're doing it, there will be consequences. So, I mean, again, one quick Santa story. I remember when my daughter was about 8 or 9. There's a boy who lives next door, and she was very excited. She got, gifts, and she was like, oh, Santa has given me so much. And he said, you do realize that Santa doesn't exist, right? It's a mom and dad who bought. And I told him, I said, you know what? If I were to ask Santa for a real gift, I would ask him that even when she's 151 years old and knows that those gifts have not come from a fat man in a red suit, she will still believe in Santa. If you can believe in that magic, it's good. Don't burst somebody else's bubble. So this is what I'm saying, that, whether you are 5, 15, 25, 55, 155, please take responsibility for your action. Let Santa give you that.
Nandini, if my daughter was around,
I thank you,
she
ma'am, for ending.
sorry,
Sorry?
I couldn't resist. If my daughter was around, she's just about to get back. She would tell you that she has recommended to me that I should sign off my next book as Consequences S. Mukherjee. Because all because she's like, I'm sick of you talking to me about consequences. I said, no, darling, there are. So she's genuinely told me
There
that I
are.
should sign off my
There
next book as
are.
Consequences S. Mukherjee.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, no, I constantly get this from, mostly from teenagers. Oh my God, that's so hard. Oh my God, that is so much work. And I'm like, at what point did I say that life is going to be easy? It's not going to be easy. Of course, it is hard. It's going to get harder. Live with it. You have to make decisions. You have to, you have to take consequence for your actions. It's simple as
I
that.
think our kind of parenting matches. It's the hard life.
Though, if you ask my daughter, she will mostly say, oh, mass parenting is parenting by laughing at me. So I said, after all those years of Nappy work. If I can't laugh at you, what's the point?
And my poor Bengali husband thinks that my kind of parenting belongs to a prisoner for prisoners in Tihar jail, not for children of 9 years. But then, anyway.
Yeah.
So, and the pravachan ends here. Today's discussion Today's discussion was multifaceted and enriching, and a heart to heart conversation, understanding the binaries of us and them, our sandwiched existence, and their tech savvy world existence. Leadership has reached a new definition and dimension. But before we try to define, level, and gauge the changing tectonic shift, it is necessary we try to be human and empower each other. So, be it advanced Lacanian mirror stage or the proverbial practice what you preach stage, it is important to do uh, something, because it is important to do so because children learn a lot by mirroring. And as Nandini ma'am has put it so well at the end of the session, we should take responsibility for the action that we have done, because life is not a free lunch. So we have to buy our own stuff. Thank you. And yes, tell me your story. Calls for submissions on the story prompt, letters from Santa. Registrations are also open for the writing program season 10 as well as 11. We hope to hear from you. Till then, stay well, stay happy, stay together. Good night.